Ohio's senior U.S. Senator was at the City Club of Cleveland this week in his first appearance before the 113-year-old institution that's hosted presidents, leaders in business, science, and the arts, community activists, and candidates for debates. It was also Bernie Moreno's first town hall-style event since he was elected last fall. That did not escape the notice of protesters who lined the street outside the event. The forum began with a request for tough, respectful questions in the audience Q&A section, but it didn't take long for things to get heated as Moreno took questions from NBC News senior national political reporter and Youngstown native Henry Gomez.
You've been vocal about what's going on with Intel in Ohio. You've asked for an investigation into whether the company misused some of the public assistance it's been offered for its plans here. Bloomberg reported last week that the Trump administration is considering having the United States take a stake in Intel, partially to help fund Intel's Ohio commitment. Do you support the U.S. bailing out the company in this way?
No, it's not a bailout. What you're
then
talking?
What is it?
No, here's what you got. So what the CHIPS Act said, we're just going to write a check for $8 billion to Intel. The CHIPS Act said. Again, you can agree or not agree, but that's what the CHIPS Act said. So Intel applied, and Intel got, to be exact, $8.7 billion. So the U.S. taxpayer said, hey, we're going to give you the money. Here you go. Make semiconductors in America. What's happened? Facility's sitting there. It's a big, gigantic construction site. It's not producing anything. So what President Trump is saying, which I 100% agree on, is if a company is going to ask for help, if a company is going to ask for money, the taxpayer should get equity so that we have the upside. So Intel has a market cap of roughly $80 billion. So if they're going to get $8 billion, 10%, then we should get 10%. And then as the company becomes successful, we can sell that equity and recoup the money for the taxpayer. To me, that's common sense. Just giving handouts to corporations makes no sense to me. And there has to be accountability on what the promises were made, where, by the way, the state of Ohio has already invested tremendous amounts of money widening roads and building infrastructure. And if there's not going to be a fab there, that's a problem. That's a misuse of public dollars and a misuse of our trust. So it's just two different approaches. One is handout to corporations. By the way, all that does encourages grift, quite frankly. Corporations that have better access to DC than others, versus a much more sensible solution that has tariffs along the way, which says, well, if you can make your semiconductor chips elsewhere, but we're going to put tariffs in place, and that's the encouragement that the companies need to make them here. And you're seeing that. NVIDIA and TSMC are investing hundreds of millions of dollars of their own money to build semiconductors in the U.S. with zero money from the U.S. taxpayer.
Like many, you were an initial skeptic of Donald Trump back in 2016, but you have become one of his most loyal supporters in the U.S. Senate. He endorsed your Senate campaign. But I'm curious, what is one issue that you would handle or approach differently than the president has, and how?
Well, he's doing it in the second term. I think in the first term, there was some hires that were problematic. There were some people that I wouldn't have brought on. He's changing that quite a bit. That's the big one.
Is there anything about his temperament or his approach in the second term that you look at and are like, maybe that's not the...
I think he's doing a great job in the second term. Look.
Come on, let him answer.
Look. So, hey, look, I'll give you an easy contrast. When did the war in Ukraine start? When did the war in Ukraine start? All right, so just facts are annoying things.
I mean, that's coincidental. It started during a war.
Is it coincidental?
Well, I mean,
how's that coincidental? Because they took Crimea under Obama.
Sure.
What it has to do with is the projection of American strength. Look what you just saw in the White House. Just again, good facts. Yeah.
We're going to have time for your question. I mean, you've endorsed legislation suggesting that President Trump should be awarded a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes, he should. 100%. 100%.
Are you pleased with? Are you pleased with his? I would like to. I have time for like two more questions, so I would like to get them in before we turn it over to you.
What's your major malfunction, man?
I would.
Nobel Peace Prize.
I would like to know. Your thoughts on his interactions with Vladimir Putin over the last week? I mean, is he giving away too much? Is he being too deferential to the Russian president in their meetings?
Look, the war is not America's war. It's not America's war. We're not there. It's not. If the war continues or the war ends, it doesn't change the lives of Americans. This would be clear. We have a president that's trying to end a conflict that's primarily in Europe. The war has to be ended by the people in that war. That's Ukraine and Russia. You have to be able to get both sides together to the table to end the war. Wars are very difficult to end. They're very easy to start. And what he's doing is exactly that. By the way, ended a conflict in Cambodia. By the way, I'm not the only one saying he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. So did 70,000 monks in Asia yesterday, by the way. So look, this is exactly what he's doing. He ended a conflict between India and Pakistan. These are two nuclear powers. Ended a war in Africa. Ended a war in Eastern Europe. We have a secure border, which is a big deal, and we're going to end the war in Ukraine. This is what he is. This is what American strength means. And again, here's part of the problem that I find in D.C., just to be super blunt. There's people who have such deep, irrational hatred towards President Trump that literally words can't penetrate their brains because the derangement of hatred is so high. But that's just, what I'm laying out to you is just facts. These wars and conflicts did end in the last 7 months. You may not like that it did, but that's actually the truth of what happened. And yes, he should and probably will end up getting the Nobel Peace Prize.
I have one more question for you before we turn it over to the audience. It's a topical one, given some of the politics of this week. Former Senator Sherrod Brown, who you unseated last year, announced that he is running in the special Senate election next year against Republican Senator John Husted. You did beat Sherrod Brown last year. You mentioned how much money was spent in that race. What is his biggest strength, though? What does John Husted most need to worry about in an election with Sherrod Brown? What will make him a tough opponent?
You know, Henry, I'm not a political pundit. I don't know. I'm not somebody who's going to comment on politics. That's your job. My point of view is that it's interesting to me that the Democrat Party has nobody else other than a 50-year politician who's been in D.C. forever, who's never had a job in the private sector as their only solution. I think it's sad, honestly, because as I travel the state, there's lots and lots of Democrats that are younger, more diverse, that could run, but they don't run.
He has a record of fighting for work.
That has, sure. So the record of fighting for working people is different than a record of actually accomplishing something for working people. Those are two different things. So look, the guy, it's just, again, look, we need a strong Democrat Party in this country, and we don't have one right now. Because again, the only solution, the party that claims to be the party of youth and diversity is looking for a guy who would be almost 80 years old at the end of his term as the only answer to their equation. I look at that and say, it's a shame because what it does, it suppresses the voices in the Democrat Party that want a new generational change. And that's just a fact. So look, if that's and by the way, it's all precast for you. If you're a Democrat, you have no choice. You will have him as your nominee, regardless of maybe if you want something different, because that's what you've been given. So it's a shame that that's the case, but John Husted is going to win that election. There's no question in my mind about that.
And you said you don't do punditry.
I think he's going to win. That's not punditry.
Moreno also said there have been a lot of calls from businesses interested in the Pixel facility in Chillicothe, which shut down this month. Moreno said while he's confident it's slow work because, in his words, what we don't want to do is replace one disaster with another. Moreno got a couple of friendly questions, but there were times in the discussion that it was stopped because of interruptions. And clearly there was frustration all around, including from City Club Board President Mark Ross.
In my opening, I used the phrase respectful detractors, trying to get ahead of some of the heated dialogue, which obviously didn't quite work. I would just, off script, remind everyone that if we're going to continue to get speakers like Bernie, like Senator Moreno here tonight, we have to be a little bit more thoughtful in the way we're acting in the audience. Well, I think most of this audience would disagree, but I'm not going to get into a debate on that.
Moreno's website features a link to the forum, suggesting he had no major concerns with the outcome, but several Republicans were angry. And Ohio Republican Party Chair Alex Triantafilou said on X Thursday night that, quote, the Ohio GOP will urge candidates to avoid future events at the City Club of Cleveland. It is not what it purports to be, and until they foster civil adult conversation, Republicans should decline participation to avoid this spectacle.